Good morning, afternoon, evening. We live in a world where connection is currency. We're constantly plugged in, constantly available, and constantly chasing the next interaction, the next response, the next validation. It's a society that whispers in our ears, if you're not present, you're forgotten. If you're not giving, you're not valued. If you're not visible, you're invisible. We've all been taught that being present, showing up, is the cornerstone of relationships, careers, and even our self-worth. And it's true to an extent. Presence is powerful. It builds trust, fosters connection, and demonstrates commitment. But what happens when our presence turns into overextension? When we stretch ourselves so thin that the quality of our presence diminishes, and instead of being fully there, we're just barely hanging on. Being present is not about showing up to everything for everyone all the time. It's about showing up fully, authentically, and meaningfully when it matters most. There's a big difference between being present and being constantly available. Constant availability often leads to burnout, resentment, and a sense of being taken for granted. I think about it when you're always available, always saying yes, always the one to pick up the slack or be the first responder. It can start to feel like your presence is expected rather than appreciated. Your availability becomes the norm, and eventually it's not seen as something special. It's simply assumed. But true presence, intentional presence, is different. It carries weight. It's when you show up, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care and purpose. And for that to happen, you need energy, focus, and a sense of self that isn't depleted by overextension. Overextension also robs you of the ability to be fully engaged. When you're pulled in too many directions, you may be physically present, but mentally and emotionally, you're scattered. You're thinking about the next task, the next commitment, or how tired you are from giving too much of yourself. And that's not the kind of presence that builds meaningful relationships or fuels personal growth. Let's break this down with an analogy. Imagine you have a candle. When you light it, it brings warmth and light to the room. But if you try to light multiple candles from the same flame without pausing to protect and nurture it, the original flame weakens, flickers, and may even burn out. Your presence is that flame. If you overextend yourself, trying to be everywhere and everything for everyone, you risk extinguishing the very energy that makes your presence valuable in the first place. So, how do we shift from overextension to intentional presence? Prioritize where you show up. Not every moment, meeting, or interaction requires your full attention. Ask yourself, where am I most needed? Where can I make the greatest impact? Focus on those moments and give them your full presence. Set boundaries around your time and energy. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. They help you protect your time and energy so that when you do show up, you're fully there, engaged, attentive, and ready to contribute meaningfully. Practice mindful presence. When you are present, be present. Put away distractions, silence the mental noise, and immerse yourself in the moment. People can feel the difference between someone who is physically there but mentally absent and someone who is truly with them. Learn to say no. Saying no isn't a rejection of others, it's an affirmation of your priorities. Every no is an opportunity to say yes to something that truly aligns with your values and needs. Recognize the value of absence. Sometimes stepping back enhances the value of your presence. When you're not constantly available, your presence becomes more intentional and others begin to appreciate it more deeply. Ultimately, presence without overextension is about showing up as your best self, not your exhausted, depleted self. It's about being fully there in the moments that matter, with the energy and focus that makes your presence felt and valued. So remember, your worth isn't tied to how often you're there. It's tied to how you're there. Be present, but don't forget to protect the flame that fuels your presence. When we hear the word boundaries, many of us instinctively think of walls, dividing lines that separate us from others. We worry that setting boundaries will make us seem cold, distant, or unavailable, but this view couldn't be further from the truth. Boundaries aren't walls meant to keep people out. They are bridges, pathways that lead to healthier, more balanced relationships, both with others and with ourselves. They create the structure necessary for connection to thrive, ensuring that our interactions are grounded in respect, mutual understanding, and emotional safety. Think about it this way: a bridge connects two sides, allowing people to meet in the middle. But it also provides clear guidance on where to walk, where the edge is, and what the limits are. Boundaries function the same way. They show others how to engage with us in ways that are respectful, healthy, and sustainable. Why do we struggle with boundaries? One of the biggest challenges with boundaries is the fear of rejection or conflict. Many of us were raised to believe that saying yes is the path to acceptance, that being accommodating and available makes us good friends, partners, or colleagues. We fear that by setting limits, we'll be seen as selfish, difficult, or uncaring. But here's the truth. A relationship without boundaries isn't healthy, it's dependent. When we constantly say yes, even when it drains us, we're not fostering connection, we're fostering resentment. Over time, this leads to burnout, emotional fatigue, and relationships that feel more like obligations than partnerships. Boundaries are an act of self-respect. Setting boundaries is one of the most profound acts of self-respect you can offer yourself. It's a way of saying, I value my time, my energy, and my emotional well-being. And when you respect yourself, you teach others to respect you too. Boundaries help you protect your mental and emotional resources, allowing you to show up in your relationships from a place of fullness rather than depletion. When you set a boundary, you're not rejecting someone, you're prioritizing the health of the relationship. The power of clear communication. One of the keys to setting effective boundaries is clear communication. People can't respect boundaries they don't know exist. Be honest and direct, but also compassionate. Here's an example. Instead of saying, I can't believe you're asking me for this again. I'm exhausted. Try, I care about you and I want to be there for you, but I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. Can we revisit this another time when I have more capacity? This approach does three important things. It acknowledges the relationship, it shows you care and value the connection. It expresses your limits clearly, it lets the other person know where your boundary lies. It offers a solution, it communicates that the relationship isn't being rejected, just paused or adjusted. Boundaries foster healthy relationships. Healthy relationships, whether personal or professional, thrive on mutual respect and understanding. When both parties have clear boundaries, there's less room for misunderstanding, resentment, or overstepping. Consider this. A friendship where both people respect each other's time is more likely to last than one where one person is constantly giving while the other is constantly taking. A workplace where employees are encouraged to set boundaries around their workload is more productive and sustainable than one that expects constant availability. A romantic relationship where partners respect each other's need for personal space and autonomy is more fulfilling than one built on constant dependence. Boundaries also allow for greater trust. When someone sets a boundary, they're being honest about their needs and limitations, and honesty is the foundation of trust. Boundaries are flexible, not rigid. It's important to remember that boundaries are not rigid, unchanging lines. They can be flexible, adapting to different situations and relationships. What works in one context might not work in another, and that's okay. The key is to remain mindful of your own needs and to communicate them clearly as they evolve. For example, you might have a boundary. When most people hear the word boundaries, they think of walls, thick, impenetrable structures meant to keep others out. There's a misconception that boundaries are selfish, restrictive, or even a sign of emotional distance. But in reality, boundaries are not barriers that separate us from others. They are bridges that lead to healthier, more authentic, and more sustainable relationships. A boundary is simply a clear line that defines what is acceptable and what isn't, what we are willing to give, tolerate, or engage with, and what we aren't. It's not about shutting people out. It's about inviting them to meet us in a space of mutual respect and understanding. Think of a bridge. A bridge connects two places. It provides a safe path for connection, allowing for movement back and forth in a way that is secure, structured, and balanced. Similarly, boundaries provide a framework for healthy interactions where both parties can engage with each other without fear of overstepping or being overwhelmed. Without boundaries, relationships, whether personal, professional, or familial, can become one-sided, draining, or even toxic. We may find ourselves saying yes when we mean no or giving more than we have to offer, leading to exhaustion, resentment, and a loss of self-respect. But when we establish clear boundaries, we communicate our needs, values, and limits. We say to others, "This is where I end, and you begin." And in doing so, we create an environment where connection is rooted in authenticity, not obligation. Here's how boundaries serve as bridges rather than barriers. Boundaries foster mutual respect. When you set boundaries, you teach others how to treat you. You communicate what is acceptable and what isn't, making it clear that your time, energy, and emotional well-being are valuable. This fosters respect as people begin to understand and honor your limits. Boundaries create emotional safety. Without boundaries, relationships can feel chaotic and unpredictable. But when boundaries are in place, they provide a sense of security. Both parties know where they stand, which reduces misunderstandings, conflicts, and feelings of being taken advantage of. Boundaries encourage healthy communication. Setting a boundary requires clear communication. It invites honest conversations about needs, expectations, and limitations. And in doing so, it deepens understanding and strengthens the connection between individuals. Boundaries protect your well-being. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Boundaries allow you to protect your time, energy, and emotional health, ensuring that you have enough to give both to yourself and to others. They prevent burnout and help you maintain balance in your life. Boundaries strengthen relationships. It may seem counterintuitive, but boundaries actually enhance relationships. When both parties feel respected and understood, the relationship becomes more balanced, fulfilling, and sustainable. It creates space for both individuals to grow and thrive, rather than one person carrying the emotional weight of the connection. Boundaries promote self-respect. Every time you set a boundary, you reinforce your own self-worth. You affirm that your needs matter, that your time is valuable, and that you deserve to be treated with respect. This builds confidence and a stronger sense of self. It's important to remember that setting boundaries can be uncomfortable, especially if you're used to being the one who always says yes or prioritizes others' needs over your own. You may worry about how others will react or fear that you'll be seen as selfish or difficult. But here's the truth: people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. They will appreciate your honesty and recognize that boundaries are a necessary part of maintaining a healthy, respectful relationship. And those who don't respect your boundaries, they may not be the people you need to prioritize in your life. So the next time you feel hesitant about setting a boundary, remind yourself. Boundaries are not about closing doors. They're about opening pathways to healthier, more fulfilling connections. They're bridges that lead to mutual respect, emotional safety, and personal well-being. In building these bridges, you're not pushing people away. You're inviting them to walk alongside you in a relationship that honors both of you. Silence speaks volumes. We live in a world that glorifies noise. Constant communication, rapid responses, endless notifications, and a relentless pace of conversation. Silence, in contrast, is often misunderstood. It's seen as a void, a pause, or even a sign of disinterest. But the truth is, silence is far from empty. Silence energy is one of our most valuable resources. It fuels our productivity, nurtures our relationships, and sustains our emotional and physical well-being. Yet, in the hustle and bustle of daily life, we often treat our energy as if it's limitless, giving, stretching, and overextending ourselves until there's nothing left. We live in a culture that celebrates being busy. We wear exhaustion like a badge of honor, equating being overworked with being successful or worthy. But the truth is, when we give away our energy without limits, we don't just deplete ourselves, we diminish the quality of what we offer to the world. Reclaiming your energy is not a selfish act. It is a necessary practice of self-preservation, one that allows you to show up as your best, most authentic self. It's about recognizing that your energy is finite and learning to protect and restore it so that you can thrive, not just survive. Why do we lose our energy? Energy loss happens when we invest too much of ourselves in things that don't align with our values, priorities, or well-being. Here are some common ways we drain our energy. Saying yes too often. Every time we say yes to something that doesn't serve us, we say no to something that could. Overcommitting spreads us thin and leaves little room for rest or personal growth. Emotional labor. Constantly managing others' emotions, providing support, or carrying the emotional weight of relationships can be exhausting, especially if it's one-sided. Neglecting self-care. When we prioritize everything and everyone else over our own needs, we deplete our physical, emotional, and mental reserves. Engaging in draining environments. Toxic workplaces, unhealthy relationships, or negative social circles can sap our energy without us even realizing it. Lack of boundaries. Without clear boundaries, we allow others to take more of our time and energy than we can afford to give. How to reclaim your energy. Reclaiming your energy requires intentional action. It's about making choices that prioritize your well-being and align with your values. Here's how you can begin. Evaluate where your energy goes. Take an honest look at how you spend your time and energy. Are your daily activities and commitments aligned with your goals and values? Are there areas where you're giving too much with little return? Awareness is the first step to reclaiming your energy. Learn to say no. Saying no is one of the most powerful ways to protect your energy. It's not about rejecting others, it's about choosing yourself. Remember, every time you say no to something that drains you, you're saying yes to something that nourishes you. Set and maintain boundaries. Boundaries are essential for energy management. They help you define what you're willing to give and what you're not. Communicate your limits clearly and consistently, and don't be afraid to enforce them. Prioritize rest and recovery. Rest is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Make time for rest, whether it's physical rest through sleep or emotional rest through activities that bring you joy and peace. Allow yourself to recharge without guilt. Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness helps you stay present and aware of how your energy is being used. By focusing on the present moment, you can make conscious choices about where to direct your attention and energy. Engage in activities that replenish you. Identify the activities that energize and uplift you, and make time for them. This could be exercise, spending time in nature, engaging in a hobby, or connecting with loved ones who nourish your spirit. Limit exposure to energy drainers. Protect your energy by minimizing time spent in environments or with people who drain you. This doesn't mean cutting everyone out, but it does mean being mindful of how much energy you invest in situations that don't serve you. Nurture your physical and emotional health. Your energy is directly tied to your physical and emotional well-being. Prioritize healthy habits like regular exercise, nutritious eating, and mental health practices to keep there's a timeless truth often overlooked in our hyper-connected world: absence amplifies appreciation. We live in an age where we're constantly connected. Text messages, emails, social media notifications, and instant replies are the norm. And while this constant availability keeps us close, it also risks diminishing the value of our presence. When something or someone is always available, it can easily be taken for granted. Familiarity breeds comfort, but it can also breed complacency. The beauty, value, and significance of something often become more apparent when it's no longer within immediate reach. Absence creates space for reflection. It allows others to pause and recognize what you bring to their lives, your presence, your energy, your contributions. In your absence, people have the opportunity to feel the gap you leave behind. And it's in that space where true appreciation grows. Why absence matters. We're conditioned to believe that constant presence is necessary to maintain relationships, succeed in our careers, or prove our worth. We think if I'm not available, I'll be forgotten. But the reality is, absence can often strengthen, not weaken, our connections. Here's why. Absence creates contrast. When you're always around, your presence becomes part of the background noise. But when you step back, it creates a contrast, a shift that makes people notice what they might have overlooked before. Absence makes your presence stand out. Absence sparks reflection. In the space of absence, people have the opportunity to reflect on your role in their lives. They begin to notice the small things you did, the support you provided, or the energy you brought to a room. This reflection fosters a deeper sense of appreciation. Absence encourages gratitude. It's human nature to value something more when it's no longer readily available. Think about how much more you appreciate a friend, a partner, or even a quiet moment after it's been absent for a while. Absence cultivates gratitude, making people cherish your presence when you return. Absence prevents overexposure. Just as too much sunlight can scorch a plant, too much presence can lead to burnout both for you and for those around you. Absence gives relationships room to breathe, preventing the fatigue that can come from constant interaction. Absence tests the strength of connections. Genuine relationships withstand distance. If a connection fades in your absence, it might not have been as strong as you thought. But if it remains intact or even grows stronger, that's a sign of a meaningful, resilient bond. How to use absence to amplify appreciation. Be intentional about your absence. Absence isn't about disappearing without explanation. It's about stepping back with purpose. Whether it's taking a break from social media, declining an invitation, or setting boundaries around your availability, be intentional about when and why you create space. Communicate your boundaries. Let people know when you need time away and why it's important to you. This fosters understanding and sets the expectation that your absence is a healthy, necessary part of maintaining your well-being. Focus guilt is a heavy emotion, one that many of us carry without even realizing it. It's that nagging voice that whispers you should have done more, you're letting them down, or if you say no, you're being selfish. Guilt often shows up when we try to prioritize our own needs, set boundaries, or take a step back from responsibilities that we've been conditioned to believe define our worth. But the truth is, holding on to guilt doesn't serve us, it drains us. It keeps us locked in a cycle of overextending, overgiving, and overcommitting. Letting go of guilt is not about abandoning our responsibilities or neglecting the people we care about. It's about recognizing that we cannot pour from an empty cup, and that we are not obligated to sacrifice our well-being to meet every demand placed upon us. Letting go of guilt is a process of unlearning, redefining, and reclaiming. It's about shifting the narrative from one of obligation to one of choice, from one of self-sacrifice to one of self-compassion. Why do we feel guilty? Guilt often stems from societal, cultural, or familial conditioning. We've been taught to associate our value with how much we do for others, how available we are, and how well we meet external expectations. Some common sources of guilt include the need to please. Many of us are raised to be people pleasers, believing that our worth is tied to how well we make others happy. When we prioritize ourselves, we fear we're letting others down. Fear of judgment. We worry about how others will perceive us if we set boundaries or say no. Will they think we're selfish, lazy, or uncaring? This fear often leads to guilt-driven decisions. Unrealistic expectations. We place immense pressure on ourselves to be perfect, to excel at work, maintain relationships, take care of family, and still have time for self-care. When we inevitably fall short, guilt creeps in. Internalized beliefs. We may carry internal beliefs like, I'm not good enough unless I'm constantly giving, or rest is laziness. These beliefs fuel guilt when we try to prioritize our needs. The cost of holding on to guilt. Carrying guilt affects us in profound ways. Emotional drain. Guilt consumes mental and emotional energy, leaving us feeling anxious, overwhelmed, and stuck. Physical exhaustion. Constantly acting out of guilt leads to physical fatigue as we push our bodies beyond healthy limits. Resentment over time. Guilt-driven actions can lead to resentment toward the very people or situations we're trying to please. Loss of self. When we constantly prioritize others out of guilt, we lose touch with our own desires, needs, and identity. How to let go of guilt. Letting go of guilt requires intentional effort and a mindset shift. It's about giving yourself permission to prioritize your well-being without feeling like you're doing something wrong. Here's how to start: acknowledge and identify the guilt. The first step is to recognize when guilt arises. Pause and ask yourself, why am I feeling guilty? Is it because of external expectations, internal beliefs, or fear of judgment? Naming the source of your guilt helps you understand its root. Challenge your inner critic. Often guilt is fueled by an inner critic that tells you you're not doing enough. Challenge this voice by asking, is this true? Would I expect the same from someone else? Replace self-criticism with self-compassion. Redefine your priorities. Understand that your needs are just as important as those of others. Revisit your priorities and ensure that you're allocating time and energy to what truly matters to both you and those around you. Practice saying no. Saying guilt is a powerful emotion. It sneaks in quietly, whispering to us that we've done something wrong, that we've let someone down, or that we're not living up to expectations. And when it comes to taking time for ourselves, setting boundaries, saying no, or stepping back, guilt often appears, making us question whether we're being selfish, neglectful, or unkind. But here's the truth: taking care of yourself is not a betrayal of others. It's an act of self-preservation, and it's essential for your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Letting go of guilt isn't about ignoring responsibilities or relationships. It's about releasing the unnecessary weight of self-blame for choosing yourself. The roots of guilt. Many of us carry guilt because we've been conditioned to believe that our value lies in how much we give to others. We're taught to be selfless, to put others first, and to be available whenever someone needs us. This mindset can be especially strong in caregivers, parents, partners, or those in service-oriented roles. Saying no or stepping back feels like a violation of those unwritten rules. It can trigger thoughts like, what if they think I don't care? Am I being selfish? Will they still need me if I'm not always there? But it's important to recognize that these thoughts are often rooted in unrealistic expectations, both from others and from ourselves. We cannot pour from an empty cup, and constantly putting others' needs before our own leads to burnout, resentment, and diminished well-being. Why letting go of guilt is necessary. Guilt drains your energy. Carrying guilt is emotionally exhausting. It consumes mental space and leaves you feeling anxious, tense, and overwhelmed. Letting go of guilt frees up that emotional energy, allowing you to focus on what truly matters. Guilt distorts reality. Guilt often exaggerates the consequences of our actions. We assume the worst, that others will feel hurt, abandoned, or disappointed. But in reality, people who care about you will understand your need for space and self-care. Guilt hinders self-care. When we feel guilty about taking time for ourselves, we're less likely to engage in the activities that replenish us. Letting go of guilt allows you to prioritize rest, relaxation, and rejuvenation without feeling like you're doing something wrong. How to let go of guilt. Recognize the source. Identify where the guilt is coming from. Is it societal pressure? Family expectations? Your own internal narrative? Understanding the source helps you challenge and reframe those beliefs. Challenge unrealistic expectations. Ask yourself, is it realistic to be available all the time? Would I expect the same from someone else? Often we hold ourselves to standards that we wouldn't impose on others. Give yourself permission to be human. Replace guilt with compassion. Instead of criticizing yourself for taking a step back, practice self-compassion. Remind yourself that self-care is necessary, not indulgent. You are worthy of rest, boundaries, and balance. Communicate your needs. Let the people in your life know why you need time for yourself. Most people will appreciate your honesty and respect your decision. Clear communication helps prevent misunderstandings and alleviates guilt. Focus on the benefits. Remember that taking care of yourself isn't just for your benefit, it's also for the people around you. When you're well rested and emotionally balanced, you can show up as your best self, offering more meaningful and authentic connections. Allow yourself to feel the guilt, then release it. It's okay to acknowledge that you feel guilty. Sit with the emotion, understand it, and then consciously release it. You don't have to carry it with you. Letting go of guilt is a process, but each step you take towards self-compassion and balance brings you closer to a life where your well-being is prioritized and your relationships thrive in a healthier, more sustainable way. Trust the power of distance. In a world that prioritizes constant connection, distance can feel uncomfortable, even risky. We worry that stepping back means losing touch, that space will weaken bonds, or that people will forget about us if we're not always present. But the truth is, distance isn't the enemy of connection. In fact, it can be one of its greatest allies. Distance, whether physical, emotional, or even digital, creates space. And in that space, something powerful happens: clarity, reflection, and a deeper appreciation for what truly matters. Why distance is powerful. Distance offers perspective. When you're too close to a situation, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. Distance allows you to step back and see things more clearly, whether it's a relationship, a challenge, or a decision. It helps you gain perspective, make better choices, and understand what's truly important. Distance strengthens bonds. Absence doesn't always weaken connections. In many cases, it strengthens them. When we're apart from the people we care about, we begin to appreciate their presence more deeply. We reflect on the value they bring to our lives, and we're more intentional about how we connect when we reunite. Distance fosters independence. Healthy relationships are built on interdependence, not codependence. Distance allows individuals to grow independently, pursue their own goals, and develop a stronger sense of self. This independence enhances the relationship as both parties bring their unique experiences and growth to the connection. Distance creates space for self-reflection. In the quiet of distance, we have the opportunity to turn inward. We can reflect on our needs, desires, and boundaries without the constant noise of external influences. This self-awareness is essential for personal growth and healthy relationships. Distance reduces burnout. Constant availability can lead to emotional and mental exhaustion. Distance provides a necessary pause, a chance to rest, recharge, and return to our relationships and responsibilities with renewed energy and enthusiasm. How to trust the power of distance. Embrace the space. Instead of fearing distance, see it as an opportunity. Embrace the space it creates for growth, reflection, and renewal. Trust that stepping back doesn't mean stepping away, it means creating room for something better. Communicate your intentions. Let others know why you're creating distance. Whether it's to focus on personal growth, prioritize self-care, or gain clarity, clear communication helps maintain trust and understanding. Stay present in the moments that matter. When you do reconnect, be fully present. Make the time you spend with others meaningful and intentional rather than constant but shallow. trust in the strength of true connections. Genuine relationships can withstand distance. If a bond is authentic and rooted in mutual respect and understanding, it will not only survive distance, it will thrive because of it. Let go of fear. Distance doesn't mean abandonment. It's a tool for growth, clarity, and deeper connection. Let go of the fear that stepping back will cause you to lose what matters. Trust that what is meant to stay in your life will remain. Ultimately, trusting the power of distance is about recognizing that space is not a void. It's a place where growth, reflection, and deeper connection happen. When we allow distance to work in our lives, we create the conditions for relationships and personal growth to flourish in ways they never could in constant closeness. As we close, remember this: your presence is valuable, but it's not measured by how often you're seen or how available you are. It's measured by the depth of your impact, the authenticity of your connections, and the strength of your boundaries. When you give yourself permission to step back, to rest, to reflect, to reclaim your energy, you allow others to see you in a new light. In your absence, they will recognize the value of your presence. They will feel the space you leave behind, and in that space, appreciation will grow. So don't be afraid to take a step back. Don't be afraid to say no, to set boundaries, to protect your peace. Let them miss you. Because it's in that absence that you remind the world and yourself that you are not defined by constant availability, but by the fullness of who you are when you show up intentionally and authentically. Step back. Reclaim your energy. Let them miss you and watch how the world begins to appreciate you in ways it never could before. Thank you